Mark Lawson had always lived a life of routine. His days were filled with work, paying bills, and the occasional visit to his elderly mother. Life had taught him caution, especially after his divorce, and surprises rarely found a place in his orderly world. That evening, the air was crisp, and the streets were unusually quiet as he walked home earlier than usual from the office. Something about the silence felt unsettling. When he reached his front door, he froze. A young woman stood there, silhouetted by the warm glow of his porch light. Her presence was unexpected, her posture hesitant, clutching a small backpack tightly to her chest. Mark instinctively straightened and called out, "Can I help you?" The woman's lips trembled as she tried to speak. I think I'm supposed to see you," she whispered. Mark frowned, his mind racing to place her face, but nothing clicked. She took a small step forward. I didn't know where else to go. They said you could help me," she added, her voice barely audible. Something in her eyes, a mixture of fear, hope, and exhaustion, made Mark's chest tighten. He stepped aside and opened the door fully. "Come in," he said softly, "and tell me everything." Inside, the warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the cold outside. The young woman, who introduced herself as Emily, sat hesitantly on the couch, still gripping her backpack. As she spoke, her story unfolded, a past filled with hardship, loss, and fear, yet underscored by courage. She had nowhere else to turn, and somehow, by some twist of fate, she had ended up at his doorstep. Mark listened, stunned by the strength in her voice and the vulnerability beneath it. By the end of the evening, Mark felt an unfamiliar shift within himself. This stranger, this young woman, had ignited something he hadn't felt in years, a mixture of protectiveness, empathy, and hope. As he guided her to the small guest room he had rarely used, he realized that life sometimes delivered its most meaningful moments when least expected. And in that quiet house, with the autumn wind whispering outside, a new chapter was quietly beginning, one that neither of them could have predicted, but one that would forever change them both. The next few days were filled with quiet adjustments as Emily began settling into Mark's home. She kept mostly to herself at first, organizing her few belongings and cautiously exploring the small house that had become her temporary refuge. Mark, respecting her space, offered simple gestures of kindness, a warm meal, clean clothes, and gentle conversation when she seemed open to it. At first, Emily's answers were brief, her eyes guarded, but slowly, her defenses began to soften. She started to share small pieces of her life, memories from childhood, struggles she had endured, and hopes she barely dared to whisper. Mark listened, never interrupting, allowing her story to unfold at her own pace. There was something about her presence that stirred something within him. Mark had lived a careful, contained life, shaped by routine and the walls he had built around himself. But Emily's quiet courage, her honesty in the face of hardship, reminded him of the goodness he had long forgotten. One evening, as a soft rain tapped against the windows, Mark found himself sitting beside her on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of tea in hand. Emily's shoulders relaxed for the first time in days, and she confessed, almost shyly, "I've never had anyone care for me like this." Mark felt a lump in his throat. He didn't have the right words to ease her past, but he offered her his presence, a comforting silence that spoke volumes. Night after night, they shared these small moments, reading together, listening to music, or simply sitting quietly in the living room. The bond between them grew stronger, unspoken yet undeniable. Emily began to smile more, laugh softly at Mark's occasional dry humor, and leave little notes of thanks around the house, small tokens of trust and appreciation. Mark realized that life's unexpected turns sometimes brought the deepest rewards. Emily's presence had transformed the house that had once been lonely and quiet into a place of warmth, connection, and hope. In turn, he noticed a change in himself, a softening of heart, a rekindled sense of purpose, and a desire to protect and support her in ways he had never imagined. Slowly, a fragile, beautiful bond was forming, one that neither of them could have predicted, yet both instinctively knew was meant to grow. And as the days turned into weeks, that bond became the first glimmer of light in a life that had, for so long, known only shadows. Life had started to settle into a gentle rhythm for Mark and Emily, a routine that offered comfort and a sense of stability. But one stormy evening, that fragile peace was shattered. Emily returned home drenched, her eyes wide with panic, hands trembling as she clutched her backpack to her chest. "They found me. I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice breaking. Mark's heart clenched. He immediately wrapped her in his arms, feeling the weight of fear and urgency radiating from her. In that instant, all the careful distance he had maintained vanished. This was no longer about offering a temporary safe haven, it was about protecting someone he had come to care for deeply. Without hesitation, Mark sprang into action. He called the authorities and explained the situation, securing the house as best he could against any potential threat. Emily, exhausted and trembling, followed his instructions quietly, trusting him in a way that surprised him even more. As the night wore on, he stayed by her side, offering reassurance through gentle words and steady presence. Every shadow outside the window, every creak of the house, made her flinch, and Mark's protective instincts surged stronger with each passing moment. In the quiet, tense hours of the night, he realized how deeply she had become a part of his life, her safety and well-being no longer separate from his own. By dawn, the immediate danger had passed, but the intensity of the night left its mark. Emily sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, exhausted yet relieved, while Mark quietly made them both hot tea. She looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, a mixture of gratitude, fear, and relief shining through. "Thank you, for everything," she whispered softly. Mark shook his head gently, holding her hand with warmth and reassurance. "You don't need to thank me. You're not alone anymore," he said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of unspoken emotion. That night changed everything. The bond they had been nurturing for weeks now deepened into something unshakable, a connection born not only from kindness and trust but also from shared vulnerability in the face of real danger. Mark understood that life had brought Emily to his door for a reason, and the experience crystallized the truth he had felt quietly for weeks: protecting her, being there for her, and helping her heal had become inseparable from who he was. As the morning light streamed through the windows, Mark felt a profound sense of purpose, knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger than ever before. The storm had passed, leaving behind a calm that felt almost surreal. In the days that followed, Emily began to reclaim pieces of herself she had long buried. She enrolled in a nearby community class, slowly pursuing interests and dreams she had abandoned out of fear and circumstance. Mark supported her every step of the way, offering guidance without judgment and encouragement without pressure. Their days became filled with quiet routines that carried an unspoken warmth, shared meals, laughter over small mishaps, and evenings spent in gentle conversation. What had started as a cautious act of kindness had blossomed into a bond that neither of them could have anticipated, a connection forged through trust, care, and mutual respect. One afternoon, as sunlight poured through the windows and danced across the living room, Emily turned to Mark with a soft smile. "You know," she said quietly, "I waited at your door that night without knowing who you were, but coming here changed everything for me." Mark felt a lump form in his throat. He remembered the fear, the hesitation, and the courage it had taken for her to knock on his door. Now, seeing her relaxed, smiling, and growing into her own strength, he realized just how far she had come. "And you've changed my life too," he admitted, taking her hand gently. It was in these small, everyday moments that the true transformation became clear. Mark's home, once a place of quiet and loneliness, now radiated warmth, laughter, and life. Emily had not only found safety and stability but also a sense of belonging she hadn't known in years. And Mark, who had spent so long protecting himself from the unpredictability of life, had opened his heart to someone who reminded him of the beauty in trust and human connection. As the sun began to set, casting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they sat together in the garden, sharing a quiet contentment. Life had a way of surprising people when they least expected it, and for Mark and Emily, that knock on the door had been the beginning of something extraordinary. In that moment, both of them understood a profound truth: sometimes, the smallest acts of courage, like showing up, knocking, or opening a door, could lead to the most heartwarming and life-changing beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, their hearts felt at home.